Welcome back, everyone, to episode 93 of Keeping It Real Estate. We've had so many guests on this show, and we wanted to highlight some of the powerful moments guests have left with us. Today's episode is going to be a little unique as we highlight some recent guest appearances this year, including Tarek El Moussa, John Gordon, Mikey Taylor, and Kent Clothier. We want to thank all of our past guests on this show, as we know they have impacted many of our listeners and have helped them grow personally and professionally. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Extremely confident, but here's why though. It's not arrogant, it's not cocky. It's confident. Here's why. The greatest lessons in my entire life I've learned about confidence was through my father. My father was my coach for my sports, and from the time I was 7 years old, I played baseball every single day like it was a full-time job. Every day my dad would pick me up from school. I'd take ground balls, we go to the batting cages, I'd take pitching lessons. And as a kid, for years, I had a full-time job. And another lesson I learned about nothing's given to you in life. When I was 5 years old, my dad was my soccer coach. It was my first year in soccer. At the end of the season, they invited my dad to be the coach of the All-Star team, which is very exciting, right? So when my dad chose the All-Star team, guess who he didn't choose? He didn't choose me. Yeah. To this day, I remember being a 5-year-old kid sitting at my parents' dining table and just crying. And I remember asking my dad, I said, "Dad, why don't you choose me?" And he looked me right in the face and he said, "You're not good enough." Wow. That's it. And then he said, "If you want to be on the team, you can be good enough. It's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of hard work." So from 5 years old, I learned anything is possible if you do what it takes to get there. Now, it's not possible if you sit on your butt and you don't do anything. It's possible if you do everything you need to do in order to get there. So then I learned nothing's handed to me. So if I want things, I got to go work for it.
This is what I do with professional sports teams and college teams all the time. And first and foremost, you have to understand where negative thoughts come from. And the question is, do they come from you? And people always say, yes, of course, they're in my head. But here's the next question. If you believe your negative thoughts come from you, who would ever choose to have a negative thought? Would you ever choose a negative thought? When you're dreaming, having a nightmare, are you choosing those thoughts? No. The thoughts are always coming in. They come from consciousness. They come from the mind, soul, from a spiritual place. No one has ever found a thought inside of the brain. The brain is the hardware. It's where the activation happens. But there's this internet cloud of software where the thoughts are always coming from. So when the negative thought comes in, my first tip is don't believe the lies that they tell, because they come in the form of lies that will tell you things about yourself and your future that just aren't true. So don't believe the lies. That's tip one. Don't believe the lies. Realize they're not coming from you. Real quick on this, a young man I was coaching, he was really struggling, even suicidal. I reached out to his mom. I knew his mom from high school. I said, let me talk to him. She's like, no. He just doesn't want to talk to anybody. Finally, he agreed to talk to me. I said, you have a lot of thoughts in your head? He said, oh yeah, they bombard me all the time. I said, do they attack you? Do they tell negative things to you? He goes, yeah, it makes me want to give up. Like, that's why, I'm in the hospital. I said, they're not coming from you. And once I taught him this, he stopped believing the lies. He stopped feeling guilt and shame for having the negative thoughts in the first place because they weren't coming from him. And he stopped beating himself up. And then I told him, start speaking truth to the lies. Start speaking words of encouragement, which is my next tip. And he started doing that. And he was phenomenal. He's doing great now. Literally transformed this kid in just a few days by teaching this to him. It was life-changing. And I try to teach this to as many people as possible because we have too many kids giving up on their lives. Too many people just giving up because they're discouraged, they're distracted, they have doubt, they have distortions, and they feel divided. And by the way, the root for the Greek word of anxious means to separate and divide. Negative thoughts separate and divide you and weaken you and make you feel powerless. Fear divides. We know that. That's a great example. So thoughts separate us and divide us. We have to make sure we're speaking truth to the lies, words of life, words of encouragement. And the best advice I ever heard, this is tip number 2, Dr. James Gills, the only person on the planet to complete 6 double Ironman triathlons. That's a double Ironman, which means you do an Ironman, a day later do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. And he was asked how he did it. He said this: I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself.
Wow.
If I listen, I hear all the fear, the negativity, the doubt, all the reasons why I can't finish this race. But if I talk to myself, I can feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. So that's my second tip. Talk to yourself. Don't listen to those negative thoughts, negative voices. Speak words of life. The word encourage means to put courage into. So when you're encouraging yourself, you put courage into yourself. When you encourage others, you're putting courage into them. Number 3, fear divides. What unites? Love. So guess what? Love casts out fear. Had a field goal kicker in the NFL struggling. Reach out to him. It was on ESPN. He might get cut. I said, what's going on? Oh, I'm thinking so much. I'm so full of fear. I said, tell me about your rookie season. Because he had a great rookie season. He said, I was loving it. I was living my dream. I was in the NFL. I said, tell me about this year. Missed a couple kicks. I don't want to lose what I have. I don't want to let the team down. I'm fearful of losing my job. Now he's full of fear. He's thinking a lot. Clutter, more thought creates clutter, lowers your state of mind. Less thought, less clutter, higher state of mind. I told him, hey, love casts out fear. Just get back to loving it. Love playing, love the moment, love the opportunity, love the competition, and love kicking. The minute you focus on love, fear will dissipate. Make love your focus. Love the process. Stop fearing the outcome. He did. Had a great rest of the year, kicked in the NFL a number of years after that. I've done this with a number of athletes. It's been transformative. So those are my 3 top tips.
Wow.
I have a model to starting business. I treated this the same way. So I'm going to recommend doing this no matter what you do, city council, assembly, starting a business. I immediately find people that have done what I'm trying to do. That's my first step. And so if I'm building a real estate firm, I'm going to talk to people that have real estate firms. When I was running for city council, I got connected with people who were either on city council or had run in the past. And I tried to just consume as much information as possible. It's going to be a little bit different based on your area. But for me, it was basically this outlook. In our area, everyone kind of does things the old school way. It's door knocking, it's flyers, it's meetups. And I felt like my competition was going to follow that model. So my thesis was do everything they're doing as good as them. And then I have to have something on top of that that separates me. So we had, 20 something walkers that were walking every single day. I had an ad in the local newspaper every single week. I had flyer. I was doing all of that, right? I was walking 4 hours a day myself, 6 hours on the weekend. I will not allow anyone to outwork me in this one. But my on top was all the digital marketing. I was like, I know everybody is not being very specific with who they're target marketing in the certain area to build brand awareness and to get votes. So I had a very intense digital marketing strategy on top of everything we were doing. And so I just basically went for it and it worked.
Man, guys, I hope you heard that. This is critical right here. What Mikey just said. When he wants to do something new, he finds somebody else who's already doing it successfully and then works and associates with those people. Every person we have on this show, week after week after week, has similar thought habits and processes. And that's why they've found success, is they go and mastermind or associate with other people who are doing it incredibly well already. So you can stand on their shoulders and then take it from there. And I love that too, Mikey, I'm proud of that. You're hearing that, snowboarders and skateboarders, they work hard. There's this stigma that these guys just, goof off and drink and whatever, but that's not true. They are hardworking individuals. And that's why you've transitioned successfully. So congrats on that.
Thank you. You're finding better deals right now, and they're safer because we're coming in with so much more equity, right? You're 100% correct. We need to spend more time educating because of what the media does is the return is a little bit off, right? I think, what people don't realize is last year, you might have had let's call it a 18% net IRR to investor at a high lever deal. Now let's call it a 15%, but much, much safer, right? And it takes time because their first response is, wait a minute, you're telling me this is a good time to invest, but I could have made more back then. So there's an educational process, right? Yep. Media is a mess. I would say this, when you focus on the purpose of media, and you start understanding that their whole purpose is to grab your attention, that's all, it at least allows you to look at it without having it make the impact on how you end up investing or how you live your life, etc. A lot of people look at the media and seriously judge media or view media as their financial advisor. It's like, if the media says invest, they invest. That's not what media is here for. Seriously, they just want your attention. So I think every time I remind myself of that, I don't make mistakes like you can make in moments like this.
I would not have done one thing different. I would never wish that on I wouldn't even wish it on my worst enemy, right? But what I will tell you is that it was perfect for me, right? I was the guy at the time. I was 30 years old. I was making millions of dollars. I'd been wildly successful. I had never failed at anything in my life. My entire world was inside of those four walls. I had no perspective or appreciation for loss. I did not even know what that looked like, or failure. And I was not humble about it, right? I was, thank God social media didn't exist back then, but I was the guy that all of this success was because of me, and all you had to do was ask me, and I'd be happy to tell you. And so I needed to lose. And I'm not sure I needed to lose as dramatically and as publicly and profoundly as I did, but when I was going through it, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And if you'd have told me then that I would ever look back on it and have this conversation right now and say, hey, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, I'd have told you you're crazy. But, getting 20 some odd years removed from it, yeah, it was the best, exactly what I needed in that moment. Again, ultimately, you and I would not be talking right now if it hadn't happened, and I had to go on a different path. And I had to understand that, number one, most people have no idea how close they are flying to the sun at any given moment, right? And meaning most businesses are one attorney general inquiry or one FTC complaint or one whatever, government interaction, and your business evaporates overnight, right? Because they don't play fair. And that really kind of made me think more logically about what I was doing. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it on purpose. I'm going to do it the right way, lots of integrity. I'm going to know that time is really what it's all about. It is not about status, right? It's about creating quality moments with my family and the people that I care the most about, and building a business that does that, versus getting so sucked up in the minutia of it and the bravado of it, and pounding on my chest and saying, hey, I'll be the first one in the office and the last one to leave, and I'm going to go build $1 billion business, and nothing's going to stop me. And no, I'm not going to take any time off, and I'm not going to spend any time with my kids, and I'm quote unquote doing it for them. All the nonsense that we say as men. That was really important for me to learn those lessons, right? Those are the mistakes I'd made in my 20s. But equally, the lesson is that, you have to expect to get hit. You have to look forward to getting hit. You have to understand that actually brings out the best in you. When you get knocked around, when life beats you up a little bit, you actually figure out, do you have the resolve to be as good as you think you can? And I will tell you, if you look at any champion in anything, right? Sport, acting, it doesn't matter, right? MMA, they pay a heavy, heavy, heavy price to be the best at what they do. I think the big epiphany for me, if I had to look back, and it's kind of my main subject that I talk about, is when I understood the difference between being a hustler and a CEO, right? And a hustler is what most, self-employed solopreneurs are, whether they realize it or not. And it's real easy to tell if you are. It's basically just the measuring stick is, if you leave and don't go to the office for 2 months, what would happen?
Yep.
Would you have more money in your bank account than when you got back? And if you wouldn't, then you are officially a hustler. You own a job. And realizing that my first daughter was being born, and I'm newly married, I could easily own a job, right? And because I could fall into that trap again. And I really wanted to actually turn it into a business, which means I needed to put systems and processes and people and leverage in place, and really take that very serious, where I get to own my time and have the options of doing what I wanted to do, and being able to arrive at a point in my life where I get to do things versus having to do things is a really, really powerful epiphany along the way. That is all done through scale. That is all done with intention. That is all done from moving from hustler to CEO. And really that requires a completely different mindset. And you got to get very, very dialed in on that.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel and leave us a 5-star review.